Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. My clock says 5:33, so I'd like to begin by first welcoming everyone and thank you for taking the time to join us tonight for this community forum. My name is Tracy Kent and I am the principal at Berlin Elementary School. We have several other administrators with us this evening on the forum. Mr. Joseph Dahara, who is the superintendent of schools. Mrs. Samantha Brewer, who is our director of exceptional education. And Mr. Frederick Hutchinson, who is the director of curriculum, instruction, and assessment. Okay, so give me just a moment here and I will share my screen. Okay, so again, we're here tonight to discuss the fact that there was some new guidance that was issued by the New York State Department of Education on April 9th. And with that new guidance comes the opportunities for us as a school district to look at learning opportunities for our students. And if there's anything that we need to look at in terms of our existing reopening plan and if any changes should be made. Okay, so what we're going to do for you this evening is provide you with an overview of those changes based on the guidance that was issued from the State Education Department, and then hopefully be able to answer any questions from our community that you have in regards to the guidance or the learning opportunities provided at BES.
Was this me, TK?
It is, yes.
Okay. So basically what we're going to do this evening, folks, is to walk you through the comparative documents that we have received as a public school. The first of these came out in July of 2020, or of 2020, July 17th. And the essence and the important component of this is that there was concern from students and families and staff that they would return to school after having been shut down since March of 2020 with anxiety and fear, and that our primary aim was to find a balance between physical safety and social emotional needs for the adults in our charge, as well as the students that we care so much about. Much was determined by local capacity. And our focus was about trauma responsive family engagement, social emotional learning, restorative practices, building relationships, and trying to establish some balance between the in-person and the remote learning. In April 9th of 2021, so just about 3 weeks ago, we received a second guidance document. Schools in New York received a second guidance document that asked us to prioritize efforts to return all students to in-person instruction using a phased-in approach or hybrid model, combining in-person instruction and remote distance learning in cohorts. And also that we should consider prioritizing in-person instruction for students with disabilities, as well as student populations that are at a greater risk for learning loss. You can advance. Ms. Kent? So over the next few slides, what we're going to do is show you a side-by-side comparison between the July 2020 language and the April 2021 language. This is in an effort to try and show you how far the progression of in-person learning has come from the guidance over the summer to the guidance this spring. Okay. One of the things that we had to do in July was to consider the number of students and staff allowed to return in purpose while still maintaining the ability to keep appropriate social distancing. At the time, the guidance of social distancing was 6 feet. So we had to have written protocols to ensure all persons in the school buildings keep social distancing of at least 6 feet whenever possible. In comparison to April 2021, this included the phasing in of quantity of students based on our capacity and our ability to have personal protective equipment. If you remember back in the summer, some of these items were harder to come by than they are today, as well as our local medical capacity and the availability of transportation. It is important to note at this time that transportation guidance has not changed while in-person guidance has. Creating a little bit of a complication for us. Due to the evidence, however, this is on the right side of the page, the second paragraph down, it says, due to evidence that transmission risk ranges by the age of the student, the CDC recommends that physical distancing requirements differ by grade level and community transmission risk. So currently Rensselaer County is a high-risk transmission community. However, the big difference between what we see in July language and in April language is that they did not disaggregate by grade level. All students and all adults were at 6 feet in July, whereas we're going to see some disaggregation by age group in the April 2021 document. Finally, on this page, you can see on the left side, the last section says social distancing also called for physical distancing, and they define that as 6 feet. And that we were to enforce distancing in all school facilities and on all school grounds, including transportation, whereas on the right side at the bottom, in-person instruction represents less risk of on-site transmission in elementary schools compared to middle and high schools. That's an important distinction for us as we move forward, but it does allow us to discuss the elementary school today with you all as to what the opportunities are for increased student engagement and student learning. Next slide, please. In July 2020, as compared to April 2021, you can see that the student groupings were supposed to be static as possible. In other words, they could not move around in the buildings. They also had to be grouped or cohorted. And that the groups and cohorts were determined by the number of students who can be at that 6 feet of social distancing that was recommended for all individuals in July. On the right side of the page, you'll see that that has changed. We can reduce the physical distancing requirements to a minimum of 3 feet for students in a classroom setting, as long as we're maintaining certain mitigation measures therein. We're going to discuss what some of those mitigation measures are, but I will remind you in the previous slide we just looked at, it said that there is a difference between the age group. So this conversation of 3 feet right now is an elementary discussion. Middle and high schools, as denoted in the April 2021 document, are different in consideration by state ed and the Department of Health in terms of that social distancing component. In July 2020, it said that we were to encourage students to wear cloth face coverings at all times unless otherwise inadvisable. We did have a written protocol. Everyone saw that, I'm sure. And we've been exercising that written protocol ever since. The language in April 2021, however, does become a little bit more restrictive, potentially, for those kids. So you'll see that the language, all this language is cut and pasted right out of those documents. Face masks are required at all times except for meals. Now, the second sentence in that paragraph is really important to us. Responsible parties will need to consider the developmental appropriateness, feasibility, and, feasibility and ability to implement such policy in a safe and consistent manner. So we've had long discussions about what that might mean for our students, and Mr. Dahara and Ms. Kent and Ms. Brewer and I will discuss that in just a moment. Next slide, please. Okay, there we go. Okay, so 100. Thank you for muting. All right, so we did receive some questions from some of you. We do appreciate that. It does help us to sort of formulate our thinking and make sure that we are incorporating your concerns. So will the school COVID test students was the first question we got. The school is not a testing site. We're not a medical facility. We have a medical facility, but that's a little bit different in the eyes of the Department of Health. We do test for sports, and we will test for some of the end of year events as required by the guidance. But in general, we are not authorized as a testing facility. Second question about in-person Wednesdays being a choice. No, we're going to have to make this adjustment together. And that means that some parents may choose to have their students fully remote, while other parents choose to have their students fully on campus. Wednesdays is not a flex day for that. It would disrupt systemic learning, which we don't want to do. There's been a lot of disruption because of COVID already. Will there be multiple pickup and drop-off points? Not at this time. Transportation to the elementary school has been running really, really well. Ms. Kent and her staff have, I think, an excellent system. It's very efficient and very safe. Many of you have been there, if not all. Will BES be offering before and after care? I guess they're looking into it for 21-22, but that's where that stands right now. And do we have any information regarding student performance? We're doing data analysis. The reality is we're still deeply in the pandemic. So there are no good research reports on this. There are 1 or 2 white papers out there that are being vetted in peer reviews, but they're not even officially published yet. What we looked at the end of the year last year, we had Ames Web data. And when we got back in September, we did see some learning loss starting in about March and obviously going through the summer. There's always a little summer loss. That happens every year in, I think, every school. What we have seen, however, is that our efforts to bring kids back as much as we could, according to the July guidance, did show considerable growth between September and January. We are coming up on our next benchmark, and we'll see where that data stands at that point. We're doing quite a bit of data analysis this year, but as far as trend data, we just can't see that. There's not enough of it at this time. Also, somebody asked about teachers' vaccinations. We cannot report the number of staff or teachers vaccinated, nor can we ask them. That would be a violation of HIPAA regulations. And will violations be required in the fall? We assume that we're going to see further guidance provided by SED, the State Education Department, and the Department of Health over the summer. So we're not really sure about that. I am monitoring the chat. We welcome to ask any questions at this point. If we don't have answers now, we'll put together a Q&A document, and this presentation is being recorded and will be available on the website under the reopening pages in just a few days.
Wayne, you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I'm not too familiar with Zoom, but yeah, if you don't mind, I did.
I didn't see it there. Sorry about that.
No worries, no worries. So may I have a moment? Okay, thank you. First, thank you for all of your hard work. I know that this is a difficult situation, and I know people like me are, probably putting up a fuss about certain things. So thank you for all of your hard work. It's, I'm sure, not an easy job or easy decisions to make. I did want to just point out to the people listening that the CDC had issued that one guidance that said, I'm going to read from the CDC website, the principal mode by which people are infected with SARS SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19, is through exposure to respiratory droplets carrying infectious virus, period. It is possible for people to be infected through contact with contaminated surfaces or objects, but the risk is generally considered to be low. So end quote. I wanted to read that just to point out that, I believe the reason for being closed on Wednesdays is to do a deep clean. And with the CDC pointing out that infection from contaminated surfaces is low, I think it's safe to assume that, a deep clean on Wednesdays has minimal effect on virus transmission. So hopefully, at least in my opinion, we can get the kids back on that 5th day and get them, rather than 80% of the education, get them 100%. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or thoughts for us? This is a quiet group today. We do want to emphasize a couple of things. So Fred put together a great presentation. There have been changes in the guideline from New York State Department of Health and from the CDC. And based on the latest guidance, we are able to look into the possibility of opening up BES for a Wednesday. Right now, we're looking tentatively at May 5th as being the Wednesday when students start coming back to us at Berlin Elementary School. And so that is tentative right now because we do want to make sure we have all the logistics in place. And we have done due diligence in speaking with the community, the staff, and so on. So that is something that we are excited about, to do it properly and to do it in a safe manner. Our goal is always to make sure that our students and staff are safe and that we're providing them the best education possible. So with the change in guidance, it has helped us a little bit to move in this direction. And we want to support you. So that's why the goal of this forum was to get feedback from you, any questions you have, any thoughts you have. So we would love to hear from you.
Mr. Dahara, if any of the community members who are on this evening perhaps later have a thought or a question that they would like to pose to us, what would be the best means for them to do so?
That's a great question, Tracy. I would say the best thing is to reach out in an email to either you and then copy me on it as well. And then we can make sure that we can get back with an answer to the question that you have. So this meeting, if there are questions that come to your mind after this meeting has ended or thoughts that come to your mind, please feel free to reach out to us because we're here to make sure that you understand exactly what we're doing and move forward from there. Terry, I believe you have a hand up. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So with this new guidance, is it safe to assume or too early to assume that for the upcoming school year that the kids will in fact all be going back to 5 days a week with no virtual learning?
So the best way to look at it is it's a possibility, Terry. A lot can change between now and September in terms of guidances that come out from CDC and the Department of Health. So unfortunately, we just cannot make a reliable prediction at this point. It seems to be trending in the direction of allowing more students to come back to school. That seems to be the general trend right now. And we're hoping that continues so that we can have more of our students back in person. But again, we can't make a prediction that far just because depending on what may happen and the variants and so on and so forth, what the CDC or the Department of Health might tell us for the next school year. But one thing is for sure that we will keep an eye on it. We will make sure to be aware of all the guidances that come out, and we will make sure to communicate that to the community through a reopening plan as we get closer to fall as well. That's a very good question, and I wish I had a more concrete answer at this time, but we just can't predict that far in the future right now in terms of what fall may look like for us. I'm hoping we're able to have our kids back in the buildings.
Mr. Dahara, we have a couple of questions coming in on the chat. The first one is from Terry, and it asks if we will be offering a remote option. So specifically, students who are currently remote can continue being remote. That's a question.
I think that's really, is that the same question that Mr. Dahara just responded to?
You know what, I was reading, so I'm not.
I was responding to fall. I was responding to the fall term and what that might look like. In terms of this year, students who are full remote can stay full remote. And those who are in person will be in full days for all 5 days in person. I was responding primarily to what September and fall might look like.
Another question that came in is, can we please explain how we will gauge the community reaction? There's a second follow-up on that question. And it says, I'm gonna read it as a quote because I don't wanna editorialize. It seems like one community member spoke in favor of opening without any community objection. Do you see that as a majority in favor of returning?
So for us to gauge community reaction, it comes down to having meetings, speaking with community members, and getting input. So what we're looking to do is get input from the community. And the more we hear from you, the better it is for us in order to be able to address any questions. For example, the last slide that Fred presented was all the questions that we had listed. Those all came from community members. So those are the means by which we want to communicate back and forth with the community to gauge what the community interest is. We are very clear in terms of what the guidance is telling us. We're keeping a clear objective in terms of how do we keep our students and staff safe so they can learn in a productive way. We're progressing in that direction. And this meeting forum is one of the ways in which we hope to gain more input from the community towards our decisions. I don't know if I answered the questions because it's through chat. So,
You did, thank you.
okay, all right. And keep the communication flowing, please, because we still have more than 2 months left in the school year, and we want to work with you as we finish this year strong and then prepare for next year. And we're still in the pandemic, so that is something for all of us to be aware of. And any questions or concerns that come up, please make sure you reach out to us so we can get back to you with an answer. That is very important for us.
Perhaps we could also leave that survey open, the one that we had sent out in advance of this meeting. And that would be an opportunity for anyone who needs maybe to think about this, discuss it with someone, friends, family, whatever, to still have access to a forum to ask those questions.
I guess since it's pretty quiet, if you don't mind, I do have one more comment or request. I don't use Facebook and I don't really follow the school's website, but I do receive the text messages and emails and the phone calls. Would you mind kind of keeping this type of topic, addressing the community through those methods, as well as, I think you posted this on Facebook. I'm not sure where my wife found it, but maybe through those other methods, just so more people are seeing this type of meeting be advertised?
We can definitely look into it, Dwayne, and we're also using Twitter. So we just started using Twitter in a few months back. So in addition to Facebook, Twitter, and the website, we're always looking to expand. So we'll definitely take what you said into consideration, and see if that is another way we can reach out for announcing these kind of meetings.
Mr. Goodemood, I also believe that this went out in an email, so you your wife may have found it through the email as well.
That's not impossible, but I typically get the school's emails, so yeah, I may have missed it, but yes, an email would be great if they're coming that way.
Sure. That survey did go out in an email. I believe it was 2 days ago or Friday, and so if you looked back on Friday, you may be able to find it. That link should be live and valid for you to access.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I definitely second what Dwayne said too about the phone calls. I think that would have been very nice to have announced this Zoom meeting to everybody. I did get the email, but I too don't really always check my Facebook or the Berlin website. I mean, I try to check my email regularly, but you know how that is these days when you get 200 emails a day. It would have been easy to miss where the phone call really would have solidified it.
Certainly, we will make sure that we do that for the secondary level, which is next week.
Are we good? If there are any more questions, please email us, Tracy and myself, and we'll make sure to address those as well. We want to thank everyone who did come to the meeting. This is somewhat of a situation which keeps evolving. So in next week itself, we may have different guidances. And so what we're going to aim to do is to keep making sure that we communicate the guidances and the effect of the guidances to you as frequently as we can. And at the same time, make sure that we're following the guidances from New York State and from the CDC. So thank you so much to everyone who came to the meeting. We appreciate your taking the time and coming to hear us and share your ideas and questions. It's much appreciated.
Okay, thank you very much, and we hope that you have a good evening.